this video, I'm going to show you how to make this really cute little half apron. We use ribbon right here in the corner of the pocket in order to create a monogram or any design that you wish. It has 3 pockets, 2 on the side and 1 in the middle. And it ties in the back, just like that. So it's a very basic apron that'll come in handy in the kitchen. So let's get started. To make this half apron, we're going to need the following items. You're going to need a ½ yard of fabric. You're going to need the pattern pieces, which you can find on the website. I'm also using my rotary cutter mat and ruler in order to cut out my straps for the apron. I need a ½ yard of 1/4 inch wide ribbon here. This is for the monogramming. And then you need your regular sewing utensils, which are scissors, your sewing gauge, fabric marker, your pins, thread, and I also am using some of this liquid sealant to stop some fraying, which I'm going to put on the ends of my ribbon just to stop that from fraying. So let's get started in cutting out our pieces. The first thing I'm going to do is cut out my 2 pattern pieces. I have here the main apron and then the apron pocket here. And we only need to cut out 1 of each piece. So I went ahead and opened up my fabric here, and this is just part of my fabric. And I'm going to go ahead and pin this one and cut them both out. And then we're going to use our rotary cutting mat and cutter in order to cut out the strips. And the strips are going to be the ties for tying our apron. So I'm going to go ahead and finish pinning this, and then we're going to move on to the ties. The last thing we need to cut out are 2 strips for our waistband and our ties. So here I have the remainder of my 45-inch fabric, and here's the fold line right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 2 strips that are 4 inches wide. In this video, I'm using the example of 4-inch strips. If you're doing this with a 3 for a kitchen edition, please make sure that you do 3-inch strips. When you hear me refer to 4-inch, just know that yours are 3. Down this whole length here. So I'm just going to fold this again in half, and I've already evened my edges here, just so I don't have to cut as far. So say 1, 2, 3, 4. So here's my first strip, and then I'm going to do another one right after this. So once this is cut, we're then going to start sewing together our apron. Okay. Mine always gets caught there. Okay, so there's one. So then I just have to do 1 more, which is going to be right here. So then I'll have my 2 4-inch strips of my 45-inch fabric. The first step we're going to do is we're going to take our main apron piece. This is not the pocket, but this is the main apron. And the shorter sides are the side of the apron. And this, the longer sides is the top and the bottom. So I'm going to flip it so we have the wrong side facing up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fold the sides. So this side and this side, we're going to fold it ½ inch. And we're going to pin it and then press it. So I'm just going to mark my sewing gauge at the ½ inch mark. And that looks about right. And so then I'm going to pin it. And again, I'm going to do this for both this side and I'm going to do it for this side. So I'm just going to finish this and then I'm going to press it. And then we're going to move on to the next step. With my side now pressed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove my pins and I'm going to fold this in half. So now my side hem should be 1/4 inch. I'm going to repin it and then repress it. And I'm doing this to both sides. So after I do this, I'm going to press it and then I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine because we're going to stitch right along this edge here. So I'm just going to finish doing that and then I'll be at the machine. I'm going to now sew along the edge in just a regular stitch along my side hems here. So I'm going to do this to both sides. Oh, don't forget to do a couple of back stitches. And I want to stay as close to the edge as possible without going over. And then once I'm done sewing the side seams, we're going to start working on the bottom hem of our apron. Now we're going to work on the bottom hem of the apron. So here's our sides here that we just did. And you're going to decide which side is going to be the bottom, and you're going to do the exact same thing that we just did for the side. So you're going to fold it up and pin it at the 1/2 inch mark. You're going to press it, then you're going to fold it in half, so it's now a 1/4 inch, press it again, and then we're going to stitch right along this top edge here. So it's the exact same thing, we're just doing it all along the length of the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and do my 1/2 inch, press, 1/4 inch, press, and then I'm going to be back at the machine stitching the bottom hem. So here's my apron, and you can see I already did the bottom. I just stitched the bottom here as I did with the side. So if you don't want any pockets at this point, you would move on to doing the waistband and the ties, but I want a pocket on mine. So now I'm going to bring in my pocket. We'll remove this for now. So here's my pocket. This is going to be the top of my pocket, the bottom, and the 2 sides. So I'm going to flip this over. Again, we're going to do wrong side up. And this time I'm going to fold over each of the side edges 1/4 inch. So I'm going to measure this 1/4 inch. And I'm going to pin it and I'm going to press it. And I'm going to do it to this side and to this side. And we're not going to stitch this side yet. For now, all I want to do is pin it and I want to press it so I have a nice crease right along this edge. So once I have this pressed, I'm going to then do the same for the bottom part of my apron. My sides have now been pressed 1/4 inch, and for the bottom of the pocket, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to fold this up 1/4 inch, I'm going to pin it, and I'm going to press it. Again, I'm not going to stitch it. Well, I'm going to stitch it, but not yet. So at this point, I just want to have it pinned and pressed so that it lays nice and flat and it's ready to go. Now for the top of the pocket, we're going to do the same thing that we did for the main part of the apron. We're going to fold this top part 1/2 inch all the way down. You're going to press it, then you're going to fold it in half. So now it's 1/4 inch, and you're going to press it again, and then we're going to stitch right along this edge here. So we're going to do this all the way down. So I'm going to go ahead and measure this, the 1/2 inch mark, so then I can press it and then do the 1/4 inch, and then do the 1/4 inch press down here at the bottom of the pocket. I'm now going to sew the top of my pocket, and again I'm just going along this edge right here, and don't forget to do a couple of back stitches at the beginning and at the end. And then once I'm finished stitching this, we'll start working on the front of the pocket and creating our monogram in the ribbon. Here's the right side of my pocket. This is the top along here where I just stitched. The sides and the bottom are not stitched, they're just pressed under. So now we're going to create our separation lines for our pockets so we can create an individual pocket. And I'm going to draw a line so I have something to follow as I'm stitching it on my machine. So I need my sewing gauge and my fabric marker, and I'm just going to line up my sewing gauge so it's at the 5.5 mark. And once it's there, I'm going to draw, I'm going to make a mark, and I'm going to do this a couple of times just so I have something to connect. So I'm going to do it again down here. And I know since it's blue, it's kind of hard to see, but I have a couple marks here, and then I have a couple marks here. So I'm just going to line this up, draw a line, and then I'm going to do the same thing from this edge. So again, I'm going to line it up at the 5.5 mark, do a couple of marks, and then do a line. So once I'm done with that, my pockets are definitely going to be marked so I know where each pocket's going to be, and then I'm going to draw in one on my right pocket here my monogram so I have a guideline to line my ribbon. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and then we'll move on to doing the monogram. You could put your ribbon image in any pocket you want, but I'm going to go ahead and do it in the right hand pocket. And I'm doing a T for my name, so I'm doing a monogram. And I draw out the image I'm doing before I do the ribbon, just because I'm horrible at eyeballing things. And for the T, I guess it depends on what letter you're doing, but for me, I'm going to do it in 2 parts. So I'm going to lay down the first part over my first line. I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to stitch it right down the middle here. And then I'm going to have a separate ribbon do the swirl here at the top part of the T. And when you're doing any areas that curve, what you're going to do is, once you get to the point where it curves, you're going to fold the ribbon like this, and you're going to pin it. And here it curves again, so I'm going to fold the ribbon again like this. So I do it whenever I have a curved area. So that just makes it a lot easier than trying to force the ribbon to go around the curve. So let me show you again. So I have it here, and I want to go this way. So all I'm going to do is just fold the ribbon like this. And then I'm going to fold the ribbon again like this. So it's end up going to look like that. So again, I'm going to do the first part now. And I'm just going to do this part. And I'm going to pin it so it's going to hold it for me, so I can stitch down the center of the ribbon. So here I have my monogram, and I've already stitched the bottom part of my T, and now I'm going to do the top. And you can see here how I folded and pinned and folded and pinned in order to create this curved look. So now I'm going to stitch this part of the T, and I'm going to stitch right down the middle of the ribbon. And when I get to here, I'm just going to put the needle down, lift my foot, and pivot the fabric in order to get around these curves here. So I'm going to go ahead and start. And if you have a really curvy shape that you're doing, it's a good idea to take your time going through it. So here I'm getting towards this part. I'm going to do one more stitch. I'm going to lift my foot with the needle down, and then I'm going to turn it this way. And then I'm going to keep going. And then when I get to this curve, it just makes it easier to take it slow so you can get the right shape. So now that I have my monogram stitch on, I'm going to use some liquid sealant that helps prevent fraying in order to touch up the ends of the ribbon here, because I don't want them to fray any more than they already are. So you don't need that much, you just kind of dab the end here. And I'm going to do that on all 3 sides. If you're lucky enough and you just did an O, then you probably don't really have to worry about this except for one end. But with a T, I have 3 sides to worry about. And then we're going to move on to the next step of attaching our pocket to our apron. So we're getting close to the end here. So here we have our pocket, and here we have our apron. This is the top of the apron, this is the bottom of the apron. We're going to line up our pocket with the bottom of the apron, and we're going to pin the sides from here, here, and here. We're going to leave this top part open. And what we're going to do is, after we pin it, we're then going to stitch it right along the edge here on all 3 sides. So I'm going to pin it then, and then bring this to the machine. So now I'm going to sew all 3 sides. And I'm going to stitch in a regular stitch right along this edge, probably about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And you're just going to do a regular stitch. And once you get to the corner of the pocket, you're going to put your needle down, lift your foot, and you're going to pivot so you can go in the other direction. And then after you finish doing this, what we're going to do next is we're going to stitch our pocket divider so we can create the 3 individual pockets. Now that I have my 3 sides sewn, I'm now going to follow the lines I had drawn previously, which indicated where I was making my pocket dividers. So you're just going to do from the top of the pocket and follow the line that you had marked before. And then the regular stitch, you go all the way down to the bottom of the pocket. And you're going to do the same thing for the other side. The next step now is we're going to work with those strips that we had cut that were 4 inches wide. So we have 2 strips, and I'm going to pin them right side to right side on one side, and I'm going to stitch that with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so I have one long strip. So you're only pinning and stitching on one side. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then after that's done, you're going to press your seam open, and then we're going to work on attaching it to the top of our apron. Now that we have one long tie, what we're going to do is we're going to match up. Here's the seam connecting the 2 strips together, and I'm going to match that up with the center of the apron. So I'm going to flip this so it's right side to right side, and I already went ahead and just folded my apron in half and marked where the center was. And I'm going to match it up here. And I know the ties seem really long now, but that can always be trimmed down in order to suit whatever your needs are. So once I pin this up, I'm then going to take it to my machine, and I'm going to stitch a 1/2 inch seam allowance along the top, connecting this waistband tie part to the top of my apron. I'm going to go ahead and sew on the top of my apron to my waistband ties, and I'm just doing a regular stitch at the 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'm just connecting the part where the apron meets the ties, so you don't have to go past the apron part. Now after you finish this, what I would do is I would try on the apron as it is, tie it in the back, and then cut off any excess fabric that you don't want at the end of your ties, just so it fits for you. And once you cut that off, we'll be ready to move to the next step, which is completing our tie waistband. So now we're going to be working on our ties. So at the both ends of your ties, you're going to fold it under, so this is the wrong side to the right side, a 1/2 inch. And you're going to pin it and then press it. So we're going to do this to the end of this tie and then to the other tie as well. And then once you have that done, you're going to do it to both the top of the tie and the bottom of the tie, all along the top here. So then I'm going to fold this over a 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to fold this up a 1/2 inch. Because what we're going to do is, once they've been folded and pressed, we're going to take our tie and we're going to fold it in half like this. So then we're going to have a nice clean edge on all sides of our tie and our waistband. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on this, and I know it's long and it takes some time, but it'll look really nice in the end once it's complete. So when you get to the part where your apron's attached and you're doing your folding, you're basically just going to fold over the top part of it a 1/2 inch. Here's where we stitched. Here's our seam for the top of our apron to our waistband. And if you press that up towards the waistband, this is already a 1/2 inch. So that's what we need here, is for it to be folded up. Once we fold this down, when we get to the part where we fold the waistband in half, we're going to fold it so this part touches right where our seam is. And all this fabric right here is going to be tucked inside the waistband. So it's going to look something like this, which is what we want. So that's why you press this towards the top of the waistband, and then all you have to do is just fold this down a 1/2 inch for this part. After the strips have been pinned and pressed. The next step now is we're going to fold this in half. I'm going to take out these pins here. And we're going to fold it like this. And then I'm going to repin it. After the whole thing is folded in half, it'd be a good idea to press it again just so we have a nice clean edge at the top. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take it to the machine because we're going to stitch this around each of the waistband edges here. So I'm going to go ahead and finish pinning it, and then I'm going to press it, and then I'll be at the machine. Here I have my waistband that's been folded in half, and I have it pinned all the way around, so it doesn't really matter where you start. I'm starting where my apron's attached, but basically you're going to be sewing right along the edge here, and you're going to be sewing all 4 edges. So I'm going to be sewing here, and then I'm going to be doing the side of the ties, then back up along the top, the other side, and then coming back around to where I started. So basically I'm doing a great big rectangle. I'm going to start sewing this. And once we're done doing this, basically your apron is done. And then we get to wear it, which is the fun part. So here we have the completed apron. You'll see the monogram is here in the corner of the pockets, and here are the pockets right here. It has been stitched on the bottom and top of the waistband as well as the end of the ties. So I'm going to turn around. You can see the back, how it's tied. And again, the front. And that's all there is to it, to making your own half apron.